Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're talking about Justin Trudeau's legal legacy. And I'm joined with the executive director of the Canadian Constitution Foundation, Joanna Baron. And Joanna's just written a fascinating column in the Hub. I encourage everyone to go and read it. It's about what his legal legacy is. And one of the big themes emerging in that op-ed is his hostility to online speech and this desire to regulate and censor the internet. And there's sort of three big pieces of legislation that Trudeau had introduced on that topic. Joanna, what can you tell us about that and how that's going to be a way that Trudeau's remembered?
So first I'll mention the two that are unfortunately in our view already law. The first is the Online Streaming Act, which became law in 2023, and this is the bill that regulates the internet and mandates YouTube and TikTok and other platforms to feature more Canadian content through this mysterious algorithm which is going to mandate discoverability of Canadian content and creators such as yourself. You are the host of the most popular YouTube channel on Canadian constitutional law, and you actually do not benefit from this
I
because you
don't.
have to be approved by the regulator. And there's a lot of discretion that basically bureaucrats can decide what content I see when I log into my YouTube page. And then second is the Online News Act, which also was passed in 2023. And that's the one that requires Google and Meta to compensate legacy news sites. And that's resulted in millions in lost revenues with canceled deals, reduced traffic for Canadian media sites, not to mention the impact it has on smaller media startups such as the Hub. And
Yeah,
then
and
finally, sorry, and then I'll mention the Online Harms Act, which you've talked about a lot, we've talked about a lot, which is going after so-called content that foments hatred and other types of content and putting huge obligations on platforms to get rid of this content, which could lead to a huge chill effect and blocking of protected content. Happily, that is not law, and the bill has had a tumultuous path through the House. We hope that it's dead, but TBD.
yeah, Joanna, you actually testified at Parliament about that specific piece of legislation, which it looked like it was a large part of it was already dead on arrival. The government had already abandoned some parts of it, but they had kept this censorship, the online censorship, this bureaucracy they were planning on creating, the Digital Safety Commission that was going to order taking down of certain types of content and ability to issue fines for content that foments hatred online, a notoriously squishy concept of what actually constitutes content that foments hatred. So it is a positive development that um, that law seems to now be dead thanks to the prorogation. But look, the censorship is one thing, and that's a big part, I think, of what Trudeau's legacy is going to be. But another part of his legacy, and maybe people in the West will relate to this more, but I think and in Quebec, frankly, but I think a big part of his legacy is actually the hostility to provinces and the desire to use the federal government to reach into provincial jurisdiction and meddle in provincial affairs. Now, our Constitution has a clear division of powers, and there have nevertheless been a number of cases where the Trudeau government has overstepped that division of powers and meddled in the province's business. What can you tell me about that?
So first and most famously is the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, also called the carbon tax, and this is obviously central to our discourse. It is the centerpiece of Pierre Poilievre's campaign, Axe the Tax. But there were serious legal problems flagged with this from the outset. The federal government purported to present it on the basis of the federal peace order and good government power, but it clearly constituted going into provinces and dictating their jurisdiction over property and civil rights. And it really inflamed provincial tensions. Unfortunately, though, the Supreme Court upheld it 6-3. There was another sort of doubling down, though, in 2019 in the form of the Impact Assessment Act, or also called the No More Pipelines Bill, which mandated federal oversight of huge infrastructure projects on the basis of everything from Indigenous rights to health and gender, and would allow the federal government to basically delay or indeed veto major projects indefinitely. And that is the case that the Canadian Constitution Foundation intervened at the Supreme Court level, and we were very happy that a 5-2 majority of the Supreme Court rejected this, which was really a blatant and unconstitutional power grab.
Yeah, that law, which I think a lot of people may know as the colloquial term, the No More Pipelines law, allowed the federal government essentially to veto things that were entirely within one province. So we're pleased with that result from the Supreme Court that found that was unconstitutional. We've got to go to break now, but we will be right back.